Hello everyone, glad to have you here. If this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. It helps me bring you more stories like this. Now get comfortable, it's time to dive into the story, Miami Airport Zombie Outbreak, Survivor's Story. Now let's get started. If you'd asked me a week ago what the worst day of my life was, I might have said the time our inbound flight lost hydraulics over Tampa, or maybe the time I had to call a ground stop in the middle of a hurricane. But that was before the outbreak, before I watched Terminal D turn into a war zone and the air traffic control tower become the last stronghold for the living, before the radios went silent and the runways were littered with more than just abandoned planes. My name is Adam Park. I'm a 38-year-old ramp operations supervisor at Miami International Airport. Born and raised in Higher, I've worked the tarmac since I was 24. I know every inch of MIA Gate E25 to the North Cargo Apron. From the American Airlines hangars to the old Panama terminal, they never finished demolishing. I used to say I could navigate this place blindfolded. That knowledge is probably the only reason I'm still alive. It started on a Monday, August the 4th. The skies were calm. Light east winds off the Atlantic. Miami's always busy this time of year. Tourists connecting flights from Latin America. A couple cruise ships coming in. I'd clocked in at 5 Calc and made my usual rounds, checking baggage loaders, confirming fuel trucks had the right manifests, updating gate assignments. Nothing out of the ordinary until around 8:30 when a radio call came through from gate J18. Ops, this is J18. Passenger disturbance requesting supervisor and med response. We get those from time to time. Panic attacks, seizures, heat stroke. But when I arrived, it was worse than usual. A woman in her 40s was collapsed near the jet bridge entrance, security already. AD had a perimeter set up. Blood was smeared along the floor tiles. A young flight attendant was holding her forearm, trying to stop a bite wound from bleeding. She attacked me. The attendant kept saying, she didn't say a word, just lunged at me like an animal. The woman was on the floor, motionless but breathing, pale like she hadn't seen the sun in weeks. Paramedics came in fast. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Station 12 has a unit on site, so response time is under 5 minutes. They loaded her onto a stretcher. One EMT, Rodriguez I think his name was, said she had no ID, no boarding pass, no bags, just wandered in from somewhere. That should have been the end of it, but then Gate H4 reported another incident, then B22. Then someone called from the long-term parking shuttle screaming. I remember running back to the Central Ops Center with my ID badge swinging wildly around my neck, not even fully grasping that something was unraveling. Security footage confirmed what we feared. People, sick people, were moving erratically through the terminal. They weren't moaning or stumbling like in those old movies. They were fast, focused, biting. Airport police detained a few at first, but the number was rising too fast. They weren't getting sick. They were spreading it. By 9:30, CBP shut down international arrivals. The FAA issued a ground stop for all inbound flights. By 9:45, we lost control of the South Terminal completely. The concourse lights flickered, power fluctuations probably from damaged junction panels. I still remember the smell in Concourse H, jet fuel, burnt coffee, and blood. That mix is seared into my memory now. Around 10 Quoc, a decision was made to evacuate all non-essential personnel. TSA and airport police began leading passengers through side exits onto the tarmac, trying to avoid bottlenecks. I stayed behind with a few others. 2 ramp agents named Kyle and Jasmine, my friend Alex from baggage control, and Amamira, a quiet systems engineer from the maintenance crew. We thought we could help. We were wrong. We regrouped in the airport's central control room, deep in the terminal's spine, behind layers of reinforced concrete and biometric locks. It was the one place with its own HVAC system and hardened access. The screens showed chaos across every feed. Some cameras were already offline. One showed a maintenance worker being pulled under a golf cart near Gate E. Another, a family barricading themselves inside a Hudson News store, stacking bottled water and luggage cases against the glass walls. Alex tried calling outside. Nothing but static and pre-recorded emergency messages. The airport's main communication line had been routed through a patch panel under the north terminal. If that panel was compromised, we were dark to the outside world. Kyle wanted to make a run to the tower. "That's where the real comms are." He said he was right. Technically, the tower has direct lines to the FAA, NORAD, and regional control hubs. But to get there, we'd need to go through at least 3 unsecured corridors and cross open tarmac. It wasn't an easy call. We stayed put for a while. Around noon, the lights dimmed to backup levels. The building had switched to auxiliary generators. Power draw must have been too high. We rationed our supplies. There were 6 of us, maybe enough food and bottled water in the break room fridge to last 2 days. But nobody was thinking that far ahead yet. We watched as the outbreak spread beyond the airport perimeter. Miami-Dade police set up barricades along NW 36th Street. But reports came in through surviving radio chatter that whatever this was had already hit Little Havana, parts of Wynwood, and even the hospital district. Emergency vehicles clogged the Dolphin Expressway. Air sputtles was restricted. National Guard units were reportedly mobilizing out of Homestead Air Reserve Base, but we hadn't seen any aircraft yet. At 13:20:20, a series of low rumbles shook the terminal. Sounded like something collapsed in the upper concourses. Amira confirmed structural instability in several sky bridges. The infected were pushing against everything: glass, security doors, even steel gates. We knew we couldn't stay underground forever. By 1400, we agreed on a plan, a split. I would lead a group, me, Alex, and Jasmine, to reach the tower and try to contact outside authorities. The rest, Amira, Kyle, and another baggage handler we found hiding in the lost luggage office, would stay behind and secure the control center. We armed ourselves with what we could: collapsible batons from TSA security bins, maintenance wrenches, even a fire axe from a wall station. Jasmine found a flare gun in one of the emergency response kits. Not ideal, but it could buy us a distraction. The route to the tower meant heading through the service corridor, behind Terminal E, then across the north apron, past parked cargo haulers, and up the side stairwell that connected to the control complex. No elevators, no shortcuts. We moved at 14:20. The corridor was dark, lit only by flickering emergency LEDs. Ceiling panels hung down like jungle vines. Someone had spray-painted a crude SOS on the wall in red marker. We passed overturned janitorial carts and suitcases spilling clothes and electronics. The air was humid and thick. No circulation. We hit our first infected near the catering access bay. He was a groundskeeper, still wearing his neon vest. He moved fast, snarling like he didn't even remember how to be human. Jasmine hit him first with the baton. I followed with the wrench. It wasn't clean. He fell, but got back up until Alex pinned him under a pallet jack. We didn't look back. Outside, the tarmac was a graveyard of abandoned aircraft. A 737 with its emergency slides deployed. A Gulfstream with its door open and stairs extended, but no sign of who had boarded or left. The air smelled like jet exhaust and scorched rubber. A plume of smoke rose from the cargo terminal. Something was burning. We stayed low, cutting between baggage carts and cargo containers. Every now and then we heard movement, feet dragging across concrete, the distant screech of metal, the sharp bark of a suppressed firearm somewhere deeper in the terminal. By 1500, we reached the tower's stairwell. The door was slightly ajar. A security badge hung limply from the lock. No blood, no damage, just open. We stepped inside. The stairwell was dark, but intact. No bodies, no sign of a struggle. We ascended in silence, our boots echoing on the concrete steps. Each floor brought us closer to a real chance of escape, of warning others, of understanding what was happening. The Miami International Airport Control Tower isn't a sleek monument like the ones in LAX or JFK. It's a concrete monolith, 31 feet tall with a narrow central shaft and an enclosed cab perched at the top like a crown. Inside, it's purely functional. Grey-painted walls, industrial lighting, and tight stairwells with landings every 2 floors. Built to withstand hurricanes and aircraft impact zones, the structure was hardened for almost anything except this. By the 7th landing, my legs were burning and my shirt was soaked through with sweat. Jasmine, who'd taken point, paused near the access door to the operations floor. The heavy fire door had a security keypad and a key card reader. It was dented, slightly ajar. A smear of something dark streaked along the frame, barely visible in the dim red glow of the emergency lights. We exchanged glances but said nothing. Pushing the door open was like stepping into a different world. The main tower floor, where ground controllers coordinate taxiways and apron movement, was in disarray. Monitors were flickering with static. Headsets and charts were strewn across desks. One chair was overturned and another still spun slowly in place as if someone had just left. The smell hit us almost immediately. Antiseptic and copper layered with ozone from fried electronics. Something had shorted out, probably the circuit box behind the radar repeater. We moved cautiously, fanning out. I checked the secondary console to see if any systems were still operational. The radar screen was frozen. Last sweep time-stamped at 14:36. No contacts, no blips, just a ghost image of a crowded sky that no longer existed. The landline was dead. The satellite uplink showed a fault. We weren't contacting anyone from here unless we could reboot the comms rack. Alex knelt beside a metal cabinet, examining the junction box. Main relays tripped. Something overloaded, could have been a surge or sabotage. He started flipping breakers with practiced hands. Before the outbreak, he'd done a 6-month stint in facilities maintenance before transferring to baggage control. Lucky for us. A few moments later, the tower lights flickered and a few terminals blinked to life. Though without external connection, we found the first body just outside the break room, slumped against the wall, headset still tangled around his neck. One of the tower techs. I didn't know his name, but I recognized the badge. FAA contractor. No visible wounds, but his skin was pale and salo. The eyes glassy and half-lidded. Blood, pulled beneath him, dried to a tar-like consistency. No signs of struggle. He hadn't turned. He'd bled out quietly in the middle of a radio shift. In the break room, Jasmine found a backpack and a half-eaten protein bar. "Someone left in a hurry," she muttered, glancing toward the access ladder that led to the upper cab. The glass dome where the actual air traffic controllers worked was a floor above us, separated by a reinforced hatch with its own internal lock. If anyone was still alive, they'd be up there. We climbed the last steel ladder in near total silence. I led, pressing my shoulder into the hatch until it gave. The cab was warm and humid, the AC dead. Tall glass panels provided a panoramic view of the airport, and what I saw turned my stomach. The runways were littered with aircraft, some crashed, others abandoned mid-taxi. Flames curled up from the fuel depot near the Eastern Service Road. Smoke billowed in black columns from the cargo terminal. Ground vehicles, tugs, loaders, even a stair truck were scattered like toys after a tantrum. And in the distance near the passenger gates I could see them. Dozens, maybe hundreds, moving slowly, purposefully, infected. The cab was empty. Charts still taped to the glass, weather reports scattered across the console. A half-full coffee cup sat next to the scope. Whatever happened here, it wasn't a firefight. It was an evacuation or a retreat. Alex powered up the long-range transmitter, a Harris Falcon 3 mounted under the left console. It was a backup system, usually used during hurricane drills when local infrastructure failed. It had its own internal battery and an encrypted uplink. If we're lucky, he said, we can bounce off the relay station in Fort Lauderdale or farther north. I kept watch while he calibrated frequencies. Jasmine moved along the windows, peering through binoculars at the terminal buildings below. After a few minutes, the radio chirped to life. Faint static, then a voice, garbled, then clearer. Repeat, this is Task Force Lima. All civilians must avoid downtown. Safe zone being established at Doral Command Post. IS. I again, Doral Command Post. If you are receiving this, Alex broadcasted back, this is Ruiz Miami International Airport Tower. We have 3 survivors, no current infection. We're at the ATC cab. Request evac or guidance, please advise. There was a pause then. Copy Ruiz. Stay put. You are inside contaminated zone. No air assets available. Ground teams en route to secure airport perimeter. Avoid contact. Evacuation window unknown. Secure location and maintain radio silence unless under immediate threat. It wasn't the response we'd hoped for, but it was something. Someone knew we were alive. We barricaded the cab hatch with a steel tool chest and began inventorying our supplies. 1 gallon of water, 4 protein bars, and a half-ozen granola pack scavenged from vending machines. No medical kit, no weapons, beyond what we'd brought. The flare gun, 1 fire axe and a heavy pipe. Night fell, slowly over the airport. The lights on the tarmac were dead, but occasional fires illuminated the darkened concourses. We saw movement near the long-term parking garage, a military convoy, 3 Humvees, and a personnel truck crawling up Endowed 21st Street. Headlights dimmed. It was too far to signal, and they didn't linger. Maybe they didn't even know we were up here. We took shift, sleeping. Jasmine volunteered for first watch. I laid down on the cold floor next to a tower console and closed my eyes, but my mind refused to rest. Every creak of the structure sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind against the glass made me flinch. Around 3:00, I woke to Jasmine shaking my shoulder. She whispered, "They're trying to get in." I sat up, groggy, adrenaline immediately surging. From below, maybe 4 floors down, we could hear it. A rhythmic pounding, metallic, not frantic, but deliberate. Some things were in the stairwell. We killed the lights and moved away from the cab windows. Alex grabbed the pipe and positioned himself near the hatch. The flare gun was ready. 1 radar round chambered. The pounding continued for 10 long minutes, then stopped. Silence. No footsteps, no retreat. Just the eerie stillness that only meant one thing. They were still there, waiting, listening. We didn't sleep the rest of that night. When morning came, the sunlight revealed more horror. Several aircraft had moved, towed, or repositioned, but we hadn't seen anyone do it. 1 cargo plane had been cracked open, its fuselage torn at the seams. Cargo containers spilled like ruptured organs across the apron. But something else had changed. Far in the distance, near the MIA hotel, a flag. It was red, made from a shirt or jacket hung from the upper floor balcony. Someone else was alive. Jasmine spotted movement soon after. A figure in a white airport catering uniform limping between cars. Then another dressed in National Guard fatigues. They weren't infected. They were signaling using an old aircraft flashlight to blink Morse. We had hope again, but we had to reach them. The tower was no longer safe. The infected in the stairwell confirmed that. The static on the radio, growing louder every hour, told us the system was failing. batteries running low, power dying, and as the rising sun poured its pale light over the shattered remains of the airport, it became obvious we were running out of time. Alex ran a quick systems check on the backup power module for the uplink, but the indicators were blinking red. The charge wouldn't last another hour. The tower had become a lighthouse in a storm, but the storm was overtaking us. From the windows I could see small clusters of infected still roaming the concourses and service roads. Some moved with mindless wandering, others with a frightening sense of intent. At times, I caught a pair of them standing motionless in place, as if listening. I didn't know what they were waiting for, but I didn't want to be here when they decided to move again. He gathered our gear and planned the descent. We couldn't go back the way we came. The stairwell was compromised, and with no functioning elevator, our only option was the exterior maintenance ladder on the western side of the tower. It was a steep drop, nearly 20 stories down to the generator pad and HVAC scaffolding behind the base building, but it was clear. Exposed, yes, but not blocked. We could move fast. Jasmine volunteered to go first. I climbed out through the emergency window onto the steel catwalk that wrapped around the top level of the tower. The wind was strong this high up, pressing against my clothes like a living thing. From up there I could see the entire airfield. Runways dotted with wreckage, the fuel depot still smoking, and the faintest trail of dust in the distance heading southwest toward Doral. Possibly the convoy, possibly survivors. I tried not to think too hard about the odds. Jasmine descended quickly, hands sure on the rungs. Alex followed, then me. The metal ladder vibrated with every step, each footfall echoing down the tower shaft like a warning bell. I kept my eyes locked on the wall, refusing to look down more than I had to. The ladder curved near the halfway point, crossing a break in the concrete where an old maintenance lift used to be. That's where the first scream reached us. It didn't come from below, it came from inside the tower. The infected had reached the cab. A harsh, metallic bang rang out above us. A window shattered, followed by the sound of something heavy slamming against steel. One of them must have climbed the inner ladder, broken through the hatch. Then another scream, higher, feral. Something tumbled past us, clothes flapping, limbs thrashing. It hit the generator pad with a sickening crunch. For a moment, I was frozen in place, clinging to the ladder while adrenaline thundered through my skull. Then Alex shouted full, for me to keep moving. We reached the base and took cover behind a row of ductwork. The drop had taken less than 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. We scanned the immediate area. No movement, no infected, just the silence of machines long since powered down. Jasmine pulled a broken piece of plexiglass from her forearm. She'd caught it during the climb. Nothing deep. We kept going. Our goal was the catering building near the north terminal. That's where we'd seen the signal from the survivor in the white uniform. From the tower's vantage point, we'd mapped out a zigzag route through the vehicle service corridor, past a row of fuel tankers, and under the main skyway that connected terminals D and E. It was tight, but manageable. The key was staying out of sight. We made it through the first corridor with little resistance, moving between shattered baggage carts and abandoned GPU units. The air was thick with chemical fumes, jet fuel leaks, scorched wiring, maybe both. We kept low and fast, using overturned containers as cover. The tarmac surface was littered with debris, airport signage, blown-out fire extinguishers, even a broken airline tug with a gash down its side. It looked like someone had tried to plow through a cluster of infected and didn't make it. We reached the underpass and paused beneath the steel supports of the sky bridge. A half-eaten sandwich and a bloodied high-visibility vest told me someone else had taken refuge here before. Whether they made it out was unclear. We pushed on. At the edge of the catering zone near the open loading bay of Gate Gourmet's service dock, we found signs of life. A barricade had been built using food trays, luggage carts and forklifts. It was crude but effective, waist-high and reinforced with straps and luggage belts. Someone knew what they were doing. Jasmine raised the flare gun high and fired a single shot into the air. A second passed, then two. I heard footsteps, not the chaotic shuffle of infected, but steady, cautious steps. A figure emerged from the shadows, hands raised, white shirt, black pea, ants, catering apron soaked with sweat. Latino, maybe in his mid-30s. He held a broken-off mop handle like a spear. "No están infected." "No," I said slowly. "We were in the tower. We saw your signal." He introduced himself as Raúl Martinez, a line supervisor for Gate Gourmet. He'd been inside the facility's warehouse when the outbreak hit. When the infected flooded the terminals, he and two others, Nina, a truck dispatcher, and Marvin, a dishwasher, had locked themselves inside the cold storage unit and waited it out. Raúl led us around the barricade and into the building. It was dark, but cool and surprisingly well-stocked. Canned goods, bottled water, even some medical supplies in one of the catering vans. We finally had a safe place to breathe, but not for long. Raúl had bad news. One of his team, Marvin, had left that morning to try and reach the MIA hotel where more survivors were supposedly gathered. He hadn't returned. Nina was injured, unable to walk far, and worse, the infected were growing more active by the hour. Their behavior had changed, less wandering, more organized, as if they were beginning to follow patterns. Raúl said they'd watched one group form a perimeter around the entrance to Terminal G, circling like they were guarding something. Alex and I exchanged looks. It didn't fit with anything we knew. We weren't doctors, but we understood routines, flight patterns, logistics. Behavior like that meant some form of coordination or instinct we didn't yet understand. Either way, it meant the danger was growing. We stayed the night in the catering facility. Raúl shared food and a stash of bottled water he'd hidden in a coffee bin. I cleaned Jasmine's wound and rewrapped it with gauze from a first aid kit. For the first time in over a day, we rested in something close to comfort, without screams, without flickering lights or the threat of being surrounded, but sleep brought no peace. I dreamt of control towers burning, of aircraft lifting off with no one at the controls, of infected figures staring through the tower glass, watching us with eyes that saw more than hunger. Morning came fast and hot. The air was thick with humidity and tension. We made a decision over breakfast. We had to reach the MIA hotel. If Marvin made it, others might have too. The hotel had its own generators, a rooftop helipad, and more importantly, line of sight to the expressway. If there was going to be an extraction point, it would be there. We armed up. Raúl gave Alex a sharpened metal bar, and I took a length of aluminum pipe. Jasmine kept the flare gun and a makeshift baton made from a hydraulic handle. Raúl carried his mop shaft like a staff. We moved out through the east service exit, sticking to the shadows of loading trucks and the skeletal remains of catering lifts. The hotel was only 600 meters from our position, but every step brought new danger. The infected were thicker now, clustered near the main terminal entrances and bus depots. We cut across a side road, crouching behind an airport shuttle that had been smashed into a fence. Inside, the driver's body was still belted into the seat. His radio hissed with a dead carrier tone, like the last breath of a world that no longer functioned. We reached the hotel's outer wall just past 9 o'clock. Smoke trailed from one of the upper floors. A fire had burned itself out overnight, blackening the stucco. The side door was open, pried or kicked. Inside, the lobby was in shambles, luggage scattered, furniture overturned, blood streaks on the tile. but there were signs of a fight, expanded shell casings near the concierge desk, a barricade of tables at the stairwell, and scrolled on the wall in red spray paint "Roof come armed." We moved quickly, checking corners and watching the upper balconies for movement. The elevators were out F service. We took the stairs, slow, quiet, weapons ready. The fourth-floor hallway was lined with empty carts and room service trays. A sign had been taped to one door, "Infirmary, no bitten." I pushed it open slowly. Inside, 3 Cs were arranged along the walls. A young woman, maybe early 20s, lay unconscious under a blanket, her arm bandaged in layers of gauze. Another man, older, stood watch with a revolver. He didn't flinch when he saw us. His grip tightened slightly, but he didn't raise the weapon. He looked worn out, not just physically, but deep down, like someone who had already gone past fear and was just waiting to see how much worse things could get. I raised my hands. "We're not infected. We came from the tower. Saw your signal." He nodded slowly and gestured with the revolver toward a folding chair in the corner. "Sit if you want, but keep quiet. She's sleeping, and there are others upstairs." His name was Carl, a retired Delta Ramp supervisor who'd been staying at the Miami International Airport Hotel during a mandatory re-certification course. When the outbreak started, he and a few other airline staff had secured 2 floors. They were mostly former crew members, off-duty employees, and stranded travelers. People who knew enough about logistics and emergency protocols to hold their ground, at least for a while, but supplies were low, tempers were shorter, and the infected were beginning to gather at the base of the building. Raoul stepped forward and asked if anyone named Marvin had made it up here. Carl pointed to a lounge chair in the corner. On it, a crumpled airport catering jacket. It was stained, torn at the shoulder, but clearly the same one we'd seen Raoul wear. The relief in Raoul's face vanished a moment later when Carl spoke again. He made it to the lobby yesterday, brought the girl with him, said she got separated during the panic. He was helping her up the stairs when they got rushed. He didn't make it past the 2nd floor. Raoul didn't say anything after that. He just sat down beside the cot where the girl lay and took her hand in his, eyes fixed on the blanket, as if trying to rewrite what he'd just heard. Alex and Jasmine went with Carl to the stairwell to meet the others. I stayed behind. The girl on the cot stirred slightly, her lips dry and pale. Her forehead glistened with sweat, and a deep wound under the gauze was clearly infected, not the kind of infected we were dealing with out there. This was old-world infection, bacterial. If we had antibiotics, she'd live. Without them, she wouldn't make it through the night. The upper floors of the hotel had been turned into a temporary shelter. Carl took us on a walk through an hour later, showing what the survivors had managed to pull together. A barricade system of vending machines and overturned beds, a stockpile of canned food from the catering kitchens, a few battery-powered lamps, and a rotation schedule for watch shifts. Roughly 14 people were holed up in rooms across the 5th and 6th floors. Most were in decent shape, but 2 were injured. One had a sprained ankle, the other a shallow bite that was under constant watch. They hadn't shown any signs of turning, but everyone knew the rules. They'd isolated him anyway. The infected behavior outside was growing more concerning. From the windows, we could see them gathering in small groups near the pool deck and valet ramp. They no longer wandered aimlessly. They moved in lines, parallel movements, coordinated without sound. Sometimes they stood for hours, faces tilted upward toward the hotel glass, motionless, watching, listening. They didn't claw or scratch like before. They waited. We held a meeting just after noon in what had once been the hotel's conference room. It was a dim space with blackout curtains and a flip chart still bearing a dry erase sketch of the airfield layout. I stood near the front with Alex, Jasmine, Raoul, Carl, and a woman named Dana, a former JetBlue flight attendant who had been organizing inventory and personnel since the third day of the lockdown. There were two choices: stay and wait for extraction, or move. Staying meant hoping the military would finally secure a path to the terminal, but so far, all signs pointed to the operation stalling outside the airport perimeter. We hadn't seen a convoy in over 24 hours. No more radio updates. The tower frequency was now just static. Whatever plan had been in motion, it was breaking down. Moving meant risk. But if we could reach the edge of the expressway, State Route 112, we might reach the cargo radar just past the Miami Intermol Center. There were rumors over the open bands of a temporary FEMA checkpoint being established near the tri-rail tracks. If it was real, it would mean coordinated evacuation, medical aid, maybe even a staging area for reinforcements. Carl hated the idea of leaving. He argued that we had walls, a defensible position, and enough food to last a week. But Dana pushed back. "They're surrounding us," she said, pointing to the window. "They're not acting like animals anymore. They're acting like a siege force." In the end, the group voted. We would leave the next morning at dawn. Night movement was suicide, but waiting longer would only tighten the noose. That evening was quiet. Too quiet. I couldn't sleep, so I climbed up to the rooftop using the old exterior fire escape that wrapped around the western stairwell. From the top, I could see downtown Miami in the distance, silhouetted against the dying orange glow of the sky. Blackouts had spread beyond the airport district. Entire neighborhoods lay dark. Fires burned uncontrolled in the industrial zones. The city was slipping into silence. And then I saw them southwest near perimeter fence at the edge of the long-term parking lot. Two unmarked trucks had pulled in under cover of darkness. Flat, grey, military profile, no running lights. I grabbed the binoculars and focused in. They weren't National Guard. No insignias. Tactical body armor. Clean. Too clean. A group of them unloaded something large from the truck. Metal canisters, thick cables, portable towers. Within minutes they had erected a tall antenna dish and began assembling a perimeter using motion sensors and infrared strobes. I watched for almost an hour. They never used radios, never acknowledged any of the infected nearby, and the infected strangely avoided them, moved around them in wide arcs as if instinctively steering clear. Something was wrong. I told Alex and Raoul. They agreed. This wasn't military relief, this was something else. By morning, the group was ready to move. We packed everything we could carry: food, water, first aid, makeshift weapons. Carl stayed behind with two older survivors who couldn't make the trip. He handed me the revolver, saying it might do more good in my hands than his. I didn't argue. We left the hotel at 6 o'clock, moving out in 3 staggered teams. The infected didn't respond at first. They simply stood still as we slipped through side alleys and cut across the burned-out shuttle lot. The silence was worse than screams. It was surgical. Just past the service road, we encountered the first real threat. A group of 4 infected blocking the path. Alex took point, swinging the metal bar with a controlled fury. Raoul backed him up and I covered the rear. We moved fast, never letting any one of them get close enough to grab. The key wasn't strength, it was distance and speed. Hit, retreat, reset. We cleared the space and crossed into the outskirts of the long-term parking garage. That's when the trucks came to life. The men in grey had spotted us. They didn't raise weapons, they didn't shout. They watched. One of them pulled out a small device no bigger than a cell phone and pointed it toward us. A low hum filled the air, barely audible, but felt in the chest like pressure in a cabin just being for descent. The infected turned all of them instantly. Dozens of heads snapped in our direction. Arms twitched, feet pivoted, and then they ran. We bolted. Chaos erupted across the lot as infected flooded through the open lanes, converging on our position. We split, luring them away from the weaker members of our group. Dana took 6 people down the west ramp toward the bus depot. Raoul and I ran northeast, cutting across the taxiway toward the chain-link fence. Jasmine led another group through the lower garage toward the tri-rail line. I reached the fence with Raoul close behind. He heaved a bolt cutter from his backpack and began snapping through the links. Behind us, the swarm closed fast, faster than anything we'd seen before. The device had done something, agitated them, triggered something deeper than hunger. The last link snapped, and we forced the gap open. Raoul shoved the others through first. I turned and fired 3 rounds from Carl's revolver into the leading infected center mass. No hesitation. It bought us 5 seconds, just enough. We made it through the fence and sprinted into the tall grass lining the outer railard. Ahead, the tri-rail overpass loomed. Concrete cracked but still intact. We climbed up the embankment as the infected slammed into the fence behind us, clawing through the Bree Reach with inhuman frenzy. We didn't stop running until we saw the tents. A line of FEMA shelters stood behind rows of barbed wire, flanked by armored vehicles, real ones this time, marked armed. A National Guard captain met us at the checkpoint with a clipboard and a medic in tow. They took our names, quarantined us, gave us water, told us we were among the last to make it out before the airport was officially declared lost containment. I never found out who those men in grey were or what the device was. But I know this. What happened at Miami International wasn't just an outbreak. It was something else. A test, a response, or maybe the beginning of something larger. I survived ground zero, but whatever's coming next, it's already out there. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams.